Welcome to the Home Studio Pro podcast. Where we're helping you create professional sounding music from your home studio. If you don't know me, my name is Colin Cross. I run a YouTube channel and business called The Band Guide, where over the last few years, I've been fortunate enough to help thousands of people create more professional sounding music from their home studios. And I've learned a lot from that experience. One, that you can absolutely make amazing sounding music in a home studio. I knew that to be true, but seeing it time and time again, pretty cool. Another thing I learned, though, unfortunately, is that there's kind of a problem with the Band Guide, at least up until now. We're fixing that with this podcast. And that's that the Band Guide mostly starts at mixing and mastering tutorials. And you can do amazing things with mixing and mastering. It is such an important part of the process. But it's kind of like coming halfway into a ball game. I'm a little bit too late. And the truth is that it matters just as much, if not more, how well you recorded your raw tracks. And there's so much that goes into that. What gear you're using, which microphone you selected, how you position those microphones. If you have acoustic treatment, where did you put that acoustic treatment? If you don't have acoustic treatment, well, you might want to think about acoustic treatment. There's so much to learn and so much to understand there that matters just as much to the end result as all mixing and mastering does. It's really just as much, if not a bigger piece of the puzzle. And so the Home Studio Pro podcast, we're going to break all that down. We'll eventually also talk about mixing and mastering, all that stuff as well, is my plan. I don't want this to be only about the home studio. I want this to be about the entire process of making professional sounding music from your home studio. But we're going to start by really breaking down what it means to have a professional home studio that allows you to get professional results easily. I don't want this to just be, you should get this interface. This is what an interface does, or you should buy this microphone. Here's why this microphone is better than this microphone. That stuff does not matter. What matters is that your studio is set up in a way that allows you to easily record, know your recordings are going to help you get a professional sound, and make the whole process more effortless so that it doesn't feel like a huge burden every time you have a song idea or want to record a new part. We want to make your studio kind of disappear into the background. We'll talk about that more in a minute, so that making music is fun and it's easy and you can get the best takes possible. I firmly believe that you can get just as good, if not better, recordings at a home studio because of all the advantages that come from being in a comfortable space that doesn't have a dollar bill clock ticking down constantly behind your back. You can just record, and if you didn't get the right vocal take, you just do another vocal take, and it should feel easy. It should feel effortless. It should inspire creativity. And if that sounds good to you, you're definitely in the right place. Okay. Now, why a podcast? I'm doing a podcast because there's so many nuances to this topic that just doing a tight 15-minute tutorial, it's easy to be like, this is the interface you should buy. And I'm going to do tutorials on the YouTube channel as well. Those aren't going away. But I want this podcast to be able to get into the nuances that are more nuanced. I want it to feel like a conversation where I'm sitting down with you, where we're really talking about this stuff, and it's more personal, helping you make the right decision for your studios, helping you really understand what goes into it so you feel empowered. And that just can't be done in a super short format in the same way. So I'd rather have these as real conversations with you. And to be honest, I've actually filmed a half dozen videos over the last few months that were tutorial style for these pieces of content, realizing, wow, there's just something missing when I cut it down to be as YouTube tutorially as possible. This needs to be a podcast. We need to have this as a conversation. So I'm very excited for that. I hope you are as well. And I want this first episode to be a little bit of a litmus test for me. I want you to decide if I'm the right person for you. If you don't know, if you haven't seen a lot of my videos, if I'm fairly new to you, or if you've never seen any of my content, this hopefully is going to help you determine if you like the way that my brain thinks, if you think I'm someone that you want to learn from. And I want to do that by talking through what I believe to be the 10 truths of getting great recordings at home. And I think that the better you understand these, if you really live and breathe these, it will inherently help you get better recordings more than any tip or just trick I could teach you, any tutorial I could just give you. I think this stuff matters just as much, if not more. But more importantly than that, for the purposes of this at the moment, is that I think it's going to help you determine if you want to spend, half an hour a week or whatever listening to this podcast every week. I think a podcast is a very personal thing. At least that's my experience of them. So I want it to feel like we're friends. And I don't want you to be here if you don't like hanging out with me. If you like the way my brain thinks, I want you to hang out with me. And if you don't like it, then go find someone else. I'm not offended. Not everyone's for everyone. That's totally fine. But if you like the way my brain thinks, I want to invite you in further into that. And I want you to have this mindset as we go into everything, because the way I think about these 10 things permeates everything we're going to talk about coming up. So I felt like it was a perfect starting point. After this, we're going to get into real actionable 4-step process in upcoming episodes for how to design a home studio, a professional level home studio that just kind of disappears in the background and makes making professional sounding music effortless for your goals, for what you need from your home studio. That's the difference with this whole series, with what I'm trying to teach, what I'm trying to bring to this space. Last note before we get into number 1 is that I got to shout out Sweetwater. Oh my gosh, if you've never bought gear from Sweetwater, you have to get gear from Sweetwater. It is hands down the best place to get gear, and for a lot of reasons. Let me just say, I'm fortunate enough to have grown up in Indiana, so I knew about Sweetwater my whole life. But if you don't know about Sweetwater, there's 2 main things that really set them apart, in my opinion. The first is that they have a 2-year warranty on everything that they sell, more or less, that is completely in-house. So they can fix, if anything goes wrong with your gear in the first 2 years, you send it to them. They are able to fix just about anything in-house. And if they can't, they ship it off and get it fixed for you and send it back to you. They handle the whole thing. So if anything goes wrong in the first 2 years, they just handle it for you. What a peace of mind. And it's just included. It's not added. That's crazy. Most places just add a 2-year insurance or whatever, and they try to rip you off if you actually claim it. They will take care of you at Sweetwater. It is such a different experience. The second thing is that you get a dedicated sales engineer. And this isn't just like a salesperson. This is someone who really understands everything, every piece of gear, the differences between pieces of gear. They are trained on this stuff. They live and breathe this stuff. My first sales engineer, his name is TJ Beachill. He went on to be the playback tech for 21 Pilots, who was like touring arenas at the time. And this is the guy that I would call and be like, hey, what monitor should I get for $200 when I was like 15 years old? And he would tell me what the different monitors I could get were, why this one might be better for my setup than this one, all that kind of stuff. He could talk through the nuanced details with me because he understood all the gear at such a different level than most people. So I want to bring this stuff to you to help get you that baseline, but for final decisions, going through Sweetwater is such a different experience. I highly recommend it. If you use my link down below, it won't cost you any extra. Small amount will come back and support this channel. Mostly, I just love Sweetwater. Shout out Sweetwater. Thank you for sponsoring this content. This whole podcast series is brought to you by Sweetwater, so I'm very excited for that. But let's go and get into number 1. The most important truth about getting a great recording at home is that the most important thing is to have fun. If we're not having fun, why are we doing this? Right? It's so easy to get so hung up in all the little details and get, like, I'm in so many Facebook groups and stuff where people are just so mean because they're nasty about it. None of that stuff matters. It just matters that we're making music and we're having fun. Like, don't get lost in the details. Don't be overwhelmed by, am I using the right microphone? None of it matters. If you're not having fun, if it's getting in the way of you having fun, push it away. Let it kind of just evolve naturally over time, and it will feel so much more effortless and so much easier. And the biggest reason that fun is so important and letting this experience be fun is because, or making sure that this experience is fun, is because if it's not fun, you're going to quit. Fun leads to consistency. If it's fun for you, you'll keep coming back to it. But if it is always like you're trudging uphill in snow without shoes on or whatever, you're eventually going to quit. And the best way to guarantee that you're going to get good at something is to stick with it. So the reason I want you to have fun in this process is because I want you to stick with it, because the joy that you feel when you make something, like, we're musicians here, we make music, the joy you feel when you make something and it just is what you were trying to make and it feels so good and it's so exciting, it's this expression, there's no words for it. But if you let yourself get lost in the technicality, the things that make it not feel fun at all, then you'll never enjoy the experience and eventually you're just going to quit. So let it be fun. And I will say real quick that sometimes some elements of this process aren't fun. It's not always fun to edit and tune vocals. In fact, I would say editing and tuning vocals usually isn't fun. But that moment at the end where you get to listen to it and it sounds so glorious and all exactly the way you intended, that makes it worth it. So sometimes you got to get through little periods that aren't fun, but the overall experience should be fun. And the question I want you to always be asking yourself as you're thinking about this is, could this be easy? If you can make it easier, it's going to feel like less of a burden. So, for example, if you are working on recording vocals, and every time you go to record vocals, let's do it over here. Every time you go to record vocals, you have to set up a mic stand and a microphone, and you got to wire it, and you got to get the right input volume, and then you got to set up your little tree of what do they call, like a comforter to catch all the reflections or whatever. And it's just so much work every time you do vocals. And then you have to pack that all up at the end of the day. And then you come back the next day and you listen to it and you're like, man, I really wish I'd recorded that second verse a little differently. Well, are you going to record that second verse differently? No. And also, did you enjoy the whole experience? And when you started recording, were you in a good mood? No, because you just spent all this time setting stuff up. And so you didn't handle it the easy way. You made it hard for yourself, and that eventually is going to make it hard. So be thinking, is there an easier way I could do this? Maybe it will get you 80% of the results, but if it makes it way easier, then that is a trade that's worth making, in my opinion. So little things like that make it easy. Always just be asking yourself, if it's starting to feel like a slog, is there an easier way for me to do this? Or maybe do I not need to do X thing that's really hard for me to do at all? Maybe it's not actually giving you the benefit that's worth how much difficulty it is. Could it be easy? The most important thing is to have fun. Just think about that. Always keep that in the back of your mind. If you're ever starting to feel like this is so hard, this is not fun anymore, it's okay for moments, but if it's starting to feel like perpetual, try to figure out if there's an easier way to do something. Okay, number 2, and this kind of relates to the last one, so not an accident. You should design your studio to disappear. I hinted at this at the beginning, but your studio shouldn't have a bunch of things that make it really hard for you to record vocals. If vocals are something you want to record regularly, then why is it hard for you to record vocals? You should set it up where you're not thinking about recording vocals at all. You're just recording vocals. You're not thinking about setting that input level. It's ready to go. Maybe you have to scale it up or back just a little bit for song to song, but in general, you are ready to go at a moment's notice for whatever it is that you want to record. And if you can do that, the studio disappears and you can just focus on having fun. And if you set up your studio in the right way, where you're getting good enough recordings, professional level recordings, then you can get better end results with less friction. And in my opinion, if you make it where the studio disappears, where you make it where there's no work that goes into the recording, you'll try things that you didn't think you would try, and you'll come back and you'll improve things that you wouldn't have come back to improve. So if you go back to that earlier example, if it was a pain for you to re-record that second verse, even though you had an idea that you know would make it better, then you're not going to set up the microphone again. You're not going to do all that again. And if you did, it might not sound exactly the same. But if you have a setup that's always ready to go, where you just go, now I'm singing this vocal, or it's easy to set up. I know not everyone's home and studio setup allows them to always have something set up, but if it's easy and quick for you to set it up, then yeah, why not? Let's just try that vocal again. Let's just try the second verse again. And if it doesn't work out, no harm, no foul. I just wasted, it was just 5 minutes to try something out. It's not a big deal. But if it took you 20 minutes to set it up and it's going to take you 20 minutes to tear it down, and you get the idea. You want your studio to just disappear into the background. Make it easy for you to get the recordings that you want. So reduce the friction in your studio. It's going to allow you to have more creativity. It's going to help you get that better end product. Okay, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in the next episode, by the way. 3, how you use what you have matters way more than what you have. If you have Logic, but you don't know how to use it, it's not going to sound any better than GarageBand. It's just not. And if you're thinking about microphones, if you have $1,000 microphone, but you don't understand where to position it to get the best sound, then that $1,000 microphone isn't going to sound as good as a $100 microphone that's placed properly. Similarly, if you have no acoustic treatment and you have a super fluttery room that doesn't sound good because sound is just bouncing off all the walls, and you put a $1,000 microphone in front of a guitar and the room sounds bad and you don't have the right mic position, you're going to get a bad recording. Any novice that goes into a pro studio and doesn't know what they're doing is going to get a bad recording. I actually changed majors in college, but my first major was music production. And the amount of bad mixes I heard, or bad recordings I heard, because it was people that just didn't really know what they were doing, even though we were working in a world-class studio, was shocking. And it really made me realize how much the gear does not matter at a very early stage. So the gear only matters to the point that it helps you get the vision that you have, but it matters way more how you use what you have than what you have. So early on, don't focus on the gear that you want. Focus on learning the best way to use the gear that you already have, or as you run up against specific challenges, what specific piece of gear might be able to help you get somewhere different or better. But don't worry too much about getting new things. Focus just on what's the best that I could do with the gear that I currently have, and that will teach you what gear you need to get, which leads me perfectly into number 4, which is that the gear does matter. The gear, I know some people, YouTube is kind of taking the stance of the gear. Well, there's 2 camps. There's the gearheads, but then there's the people the gear doesn't matter. You can make a great sounding recording. It doesn't matter if it's a $100 microphone, $100 interface. It's going to sound just as good as a $20,000 microphone and preamp and converter and all that stuff. Not fully true. There's some nuance to this here. Okay, so for example, if you want a telly sound, if you're a guitarist, you want a telly sound and you only have a Les Paul, it's going to be really hard for you to get something that sounds like a telly. You might be able to get something closer, but you're not going to get that telly or that Stratocaster sound from something with humbuckers. Or if you have EMT humbucker pickups, you're not going to get that same kind of like telly or Stratocaster sound or whatever. You got to match the sound that you're going for with the gear to some extent. Now, there's also something to be said that you could get a very cool recording that is a very cool sound that should have been a Telecaster part, but you didn't have a Telecaster, so you used your Les Paul to get a cool sound. And I actually think that that's the best way within reason. But at some point, if you want that Telecaster sound in your recording, maybe you should get a Telecaster. And there's nothing wrong with loving gear and getting gear if you like gear and it makes you feel inspired and it makes you feel like you get a better performance. Personally, the way that I hierarchy how much gear matters is that it matters the most at the player level. So how good you are at a player. Then the first extension of that is the instrument. So for me, it's the drums, how good my drums sound, not just good, because there's no such thing as just a good drum sound, but how appropriate my drum sound is for the song that I'm making. And so matching my drum sound to the song that I'm working on. And there's a lot of free or cheap modifiers you can use to help with that. Things you can use to deaden the drum tone, deaden the cymbals. Maybe you need to get new cymbals and change them out occasionally, but there's a lot of modifiers you can use that can help modify that. Similar things with guitar in terms of things you can put on the guitar to modify the sound. Also, guitar pedals can be modifiers, different amps, all that. Anyway, there's stages. So how good the player is at playing, how good the instrument sounds. Then you start to get into the microphone. More important than the microphone, the mic placement. It will change your sound so much more if you are in a bad placement compared to if you're in the right placement on something. If you're on a speaker cab, if you're further away towards the darker sound of that speaker cab and you want that brighter sound, rather than EQing it later, you should just move it a little bit closer to the cone of the speaker where it's going to be a little bit brighter. Maybe you back the microphone up a little bit so you don't have as much proximity effect. We can talk about all this stuff in detail in the future episodes if you want. But point being, you will get a better end result if you are intentional with your mic placement. So more than even the mic choice is the mic placement. Then you have mic choice. Then you have, so maybe it's time to upgrade your mic if you aren't getting the exact sound you want from your microphone. Maybe you want that dark drum room sound and you're using a condenser. Maybe you should get a ribbon. One being, that's getting real specific, but you get the idea. And then from there, preamps, then from there, converters. And so we have this long list of things that really matter. But if you don't understand the fundamentals of recording and you're just trying to get the more expensive thing, hoping it's going to help your recording, that's not going to be the case. But if you do slowly improve your gear as you understand the layers that it's going to improve what it is you're trying to record and the final sound, help you get that final vision. If it makes it easier for you and it bakes in some of that sound that's a little bit closer to your final vision from an earlier stage, that's better. So in that way, the gear does matter. So anybody that says the gear doesn't matter, period, they are missing the nuance of this conversation. It's important that we acknowledge that. But that doesn't mean if you have affordable things, you can't get great results. It's just a bit of a balancing act and something that you'll learn and understand over time. And we'll talk about that throughout this series. Okay. Number 5, you should reference at every stage. Before you even start recording, start thinking of references that are similar-ish in the vein of the kind of song that you're working on and just be inspired by them. And be inspired for production reasons. Be inspired for tone reasons. Like if you want to sound like an 80s record, go listen to some 80s records before you record. Don't listen to a bunch of things from 2025. Like you will not have the same thought process in terms of how you're tuning your drums, what your drum selections are, what your guitar tones sound like, what your, all those variables that matter a whole lot. You're going to make different and maybe wrong decisions towards getting you towards your goal. So listen to professional mixes of songs that you love that are in the vein of what it is that you're working on and keep those tones in mind and reference back to them. You don't need to emulate them exactly, but you should be referencing back to them. And then from there, as you move into the mixing process, you finish the recording and producing. Oh, by the way, with recording, you also want to be thinking like, how are they bringing more energy into their choruses compared to me? Okay, maybe they have a tambourine that comes in. Let me try adding a tambourine to mine. Oh, they have a center guitar that comes in this chorus. Let me add a center guitar line. Oh, it sounds like they might have a sub synth that comes in just in this chorus. Let me try adding a sub synth. Listen to their productions and try to pick out the pieces that will help your production get closer to their production. So if you do that in the recording phase, when you start mixing, you're already going to be on a better foot. Then when you start mixing, you want to be referencing as well, but your referencing here changes a little bit. You want to be thinking about how you want to be listening more broadly. You can get really specific to the EQ on drums and vocals and things like that, but you want to be listening a bit more broadly so that you stay in the lanes of what it is that they're working. So if you're listening to a mix that you love the sound of and your mix is way brighter, maybe you need to cut some brightness on some things. That's the kind of thing that feels scary if you're working in solo, but if you're referencing throughout, you can be confident. Oh, my mix is way brighter than this mix that I love. Let me cut some of the brightness. Or I don't have nearly enough sub in my mix. Or my mix isn't nearly as warm as I want it to be. Maybe I need to cut some brightness and add a little bit of warmth to it. You get the idea. You're referencing. You're not comparing. They have a finished mix that had someone that worked on it that had probably been working on music for decades. And you don't want to compare to that, but you want to be inspired by it, and you want it to keep you in your lane and inform your decisions. And then you also want to be referencing, when you get in the mixing stage, your unmixed track. I call this your static mix. So you get all your levels set of your mix, then you export that out, you re-import it in your mixing session, and you listen as you're making mixing decisions further down the line. You go back to that static mix, and most of the time what will happen is it's going to inspire you. It's going to encourage you. It's going to say, wow, this sounds so much better now that you've been mixing. That's great, and that's what you want. Occasionally what will happen is also okay, though, and this has happened to me even still sometimes, where I listen back and I'm like, wow, there was like a lot of punch to that snare that now feels way too thin. I over-EQ'd it. I overdid it. I didn't think, or I overcompressed, or whatever the variable was. Once you realize that, when you're checking back to your mix, you can course correct quickly while you're working on your mix so that you don't finish your mix and realize, wow, this mix is so far from where I want it to be. So it gives you that perspective of maybe I did too much in the mixing process and I actually want to scale it back. So regularly checking pro mixes, and then also your static mix, your unprocessed mix, is going to give you a lot of good data, a lot of good information. And then in mastering, you want to be comparing for loudness levels of mixes that you love, and you want to be comparing for like overall, LUFs and the tone. So loudness and tone, making sure that's going to stand up to mixes that you love if anyone ever hears it back to back. Okay, reference at every stage. So key, and people don't talk about it enough. Okay, number 6. I just realized that my numbering is off on my document. Number 6, you want to learn to mix to improve your recordings. So as I said, the reason I started teaching mixing first was, one, that I was most comfortable with teaching. It's a little bit easier to teach. But 2 is because I actually think people should learn it first. You should record a song, and it's okay if the recording is just okay. And you should go through the mixing process, because you're going to learn so much about what a good recording, a better recording would be, by trying to shape your mix into what you want the final sound to be. Like, for example, while you're recording, you realize, wow, that guitar was way too muddy. Maybe I should try a different mic position. Or, even if you're using a virtual amp, usually you have a mic that you can adjust, change out the microphone, change the mic position. Maybe I want to try a different mic position to get a slightly different tone on that recording. Or maybe I need to dial up the treble on the amp, or dial the bass back on the amp, or whatever. You have so many different variables that then when you go to record your next song, you can employ and try to improve your next song just a little bit. And by knowing it from the mixing stage, it's going to help you get better recordings, which is going to help you get a better mix on your next mix, which is going to help you get it. See, it's this reciprocating or self-perpetuating thing. The better you're mixing, the better your recordings will be, the better your masters will be. All of it just kind of intersects. The better mixes, the better your masters, the better your recordings, the better your mixes, the better your masters. You get the point. It's just perpetual, and it's self-perpetuating. So you will get better over time. Stick with it. Trust the process. You want to learn mixing to improve your recordings. It also means better producing, because if you realize in mixing, wow, I really wish I had another guitar for the left ear here, or I really wish I had one more element to come in here. If you didn't think to get that because you're new to this whole process, that's totally okay. Next time you go to record, you now know, oh, I want to double track my guitars. I want to have 2 guitars so I can pan one left and one right. All those different things that you need to know, you can study all you want. You can have people tell you all you want, but ultimately the best way to learn a lot of times it's just doing. So record a song, try to mix it, try to master it, and then analyze through that process, how could you get a better recording for the next project from both a tonal but also production perspective? Do I need to add percussion? Do I need to add another guitar track to get the sound that I want? Do I want a synth pad to fill out the low mid range on this song because my guitars are too twangy? Whatever. You get the idea. There's so many things that you can learn from it, and you should. So stick with it. Learn mixing so that it can help improve your recordings. I think we're up to 7 now. Again, I messed up my number on my document. I think number 7, everyone should mix on headphones. Unpopular opinion. Speakers are great. Speakers also suck. The reason speakers are hard to mix on is because they introduce the room. Okay? If you want your mixes to sound good everywhere, there's 2 things that you really need to have. You need to have an accurate playback source, meaning that what you are hearing is what is happening in the mix. That's number 1. The second is how well you know that playback system. So you need to learn whatever it is that you're mixing on really, really well. It needs to be accurate, and you need to learn it. The problem with speakers is that speakers always exist in the space that they're in. The problem with home studios is that they generally are not the best acoustic setup. And so there are a lot of things that you can do, but one, it takes a fair amount of knowledge. It takes a fair amount of time and or money investment to get your space set up to be a really, really great acoustic space. And even still, it will likely have some problems with it. So there's always some amount of your speakers are lying to you when you're mixing with speakers, because the way sound bounces around in the room might build up certain frequencies. It might cancel out other frequencies. So point being, if you have way too much bass that builds up in your room because of the way your room is laid out and the size of your room and all that stuff, then you might not mix enough into your mixes, enough low end into your mixes, and that's going to be a problem that you kind of constantly are fighting. And yes, you can learn the way your speakers sound, but there is that element of things are getting overemphasized or de-emphasized by the room that you may, in some cases, if they totally phase out, like if they totally cancel out, you might almost not hear certain things going on in your mix. Compare that to if you're mixing headphones. Guess what headphones don't have? A room. There's nothing that impacts how I hear the sound coming out of these speakers. There's speakers in these headphones. So I can get a very accurate sound from these headphones. It's a myth that you can't get a great sounding mix from headphones. I've been mixing almost exclusively on headphones for about 5 years now because my new home studio setup in my house that is not this current setup, but my last setup, so suboptimal that speakers kind of could not sound good in that space. These allowed me to get amazing sounding mixes no matter where I was. You could be mixing in a bathroom and on your couch and in your friend's house. It doesn't matter where you're mixing. It's going to sound the same. And so you can learn them, which is the other side of it. They can be more accurate because there's no room, but then you can learn them because they're going to be consistent and you can take them with you wherever you are. So the pros of mixing on headphones are so big. And a big note that I would make about mixing on headphones is that they also allow you to be totally flexible. Like I used to only be able to work when I was able to plug in and set up in my home studio setup, and I could totally get everything just dialed in just right, and I could listen at a volume that was comfortable and it wasn't bothering other people, whatever. I can do this while I'm on the couch with my wife at night. Like it is fine. She can be watching The Bachelor and I could be listening to this, or Gilmore Girls. My wife loves Gilmore Girls. She's mid on The Bachelor, but she loves Gilmore Girls. But I could be mixing with these, and I could have the same sound that I'd have as if I were in my studio. So it gives you so much flexibility that will help make it easier, make it more fun, make it, you get the point. Everyone should learn to mix on headphones. And then I know I said a final point, but a final point is that the other thing is if you want to mix on speakers, like in the studio I'm in right now, I'm going to set it up acoustically so that I can mix on speakers in here. I couldn't really do that in my old space that well at least, but I can in this space. But I'm not going to initially just start mixing on those speakers because then I got to really learn them. And I'm going to probably start with the speakers before I have all the acoustic treatment up. And so it won't be an optimal setup. But what I can do is mix mostly on headphones, check on speakers, learn how it sounds on a different setup and how, what issues I'm running into listening to on the speakers, put my headphones back on, kind of dial it in a little bit more, listen back on the speakers. As I get my acoustic treatment dialed in a little bit better, as I understand the speakers a little bit better, eventually I'll know those speakers as well as I know these headphones, and I'll be able to mix on these speakers as confidently as I can mix on these headphones. And then I can do whatever I want, right? But you should learn to mix on headphones because they're infinitely flexible. Okay. Everyone should learn to mix, or everyone should mix on headphones. 7, no, this is 8. This numbering thing is really messing me up, y'all. 8, create the best sounding room you can. Okay. So I kind of touched on it with the speaker thing, but it matters a lot. Your room will either emphasize or de-emphasize certain frequencies. And you can adjust this with acoustic treatment. You can make your room sound more pleasing and have less of that where functionally what's happening, if your room is over-amplifying or de-emphasizing certain frequencies, then what ends up happening if you're mixing is that your speakers are lying to you. If you're recording is that your microphone is going to hear a lied to sound of what, like you could have the best acoustic guitar in the room, but if the room sounds bad, that microphone is going to hear what's going on in that room and get a bad version of that acoustic guitar. So you want to give yourself the best fighting chance here and record your acoustic guitar with acoustic treatment, with proper acoustic treatment. Same goes with vocals, same go with drums. The more sound bounces around in a room, the more it's going to build up or de-emphasize certain frequencies, and that's going to give you the wrong image into your microphone. So finding ways to break that up with acoustic treatment, that doesn't necessarily mean you need a bunch of panels on your wall. It can be very specific and tailored with just a couple of what are called gobos, which are like acoustic panels that move. You could have a couple of gobos that are just set up so that that sound doesn't bounce back into the microphone, and you can get really creative and get a great result. We'll talk a lot about acoustic treatment coming up. There's so much you need to understand with it. But for now, just know you need to create the best sounding room that you can, whether that's just to record with just a couple gobos and a microphone over here, or if you want to mix, you need to set up your entire space to sound as good as possible. And we'll talk about that more coming up. So definitely come back for that. Number 9, don't let great be the enemy of good. This is so important with all this stuff. You might be hearing some of what I'm saying right now and be thinking, well, I don't have the acoustic treatment set up and I don't know, mic position that well. And I don't know. Here's the thing. You will never know it. You will always be learning. You will never know it to a point that you're like 100%, this is great. And almost no room is perfect. Even pro studios have weird anomalies in most of their acoustic treatment. I've been in some pro studios that sound kind of bad, but that thing that makes them sound bad sounds kind of great. There's no such thing as perfect. So if you wait for perfect with your setup, you will never finish anything. And with that, you'll never improve. So let's say, specific example here. Let's say you were like, I can't work on another song until I get $10,000 worth of acoustic treatment into this room, because that would be a perfect setup. Great. I'd love for you to have $10,000. Like, I don't have $10,000 to put in acoustic treatment, but if you do and you want to, that's great. The problem is if you don't do anything and then you just put in that acoustic treatment, you might not even know how much it affected the space. But if you start working on music, if you have an idea right now, go ahead and record. Maybe it's going to sound great with the kind of weird acoustics in your room. Go ahead and start working on it. And then as you add that acoustic treatment, maybe you didn't need $10,000. Maybe you could have got away with $1,000 of acoustic treatment well placed. And as you add it, you start to hear the differences because you recorded before and now you're recording. Now you hear the differences. You will get better results if you understand the difference and if you let yourself grow over time. But if you don't let yourself do anything because you're waiting for it to be great, it'll be harder to improve and you just won't finish anything. So perfectionism will kill you. Just finish, just ship it, just keep working on it. Don't wait for it to be perfect. Finish it. And you learn more from finishing than you do by just tweaking something forever also. So if you are continuously tweaking that mix, if you're in the mixing stage and you just are tweaking, stop tweaking, finish the mix, ship it out, work on the next mix. You'll learn more by working on the next thing than just continuously trying to improve the same thing over and over and over again. Okay. My final thought, and this will help you tremendously with this, is 1% better at a time. You don't need to make drastic improvements. You just need to improve a little bit here and there. So this goes for everything. Your interface, how you, I could get into this. Let's talk about it at a better level. When you're recording, whatever it is you're recording, just see if you can get that recording 1% better. It doesn't have to be a huge improvement. Just record 2 mic positions. Does one of them sound a little bit better? Go with that one. If you do that across all your sources in your recording, guess what? You've improved the raw recordings 10 or 20%. in your mixing. Mixing is almost never huge moves that do a whole bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of little stuff. So you do a little bit of EQ here, you do a little bit of EQ there, you do a little bit of compression here, a little compression, a little reverb, and adds up to be an amazing thing. But if you tried to come in and do a big, huge thing, or you try this plugin that just drastically changes the sound, it probably isn't going to work nearly as well if you just make these little 1% improvements. So the nice thing is that means you don't have to do these huge things. You're not missing anything huge. You just need to make small incremental improvements and it will get better and add up. And then finally mastering, same kind of thing. So if you improve your recordings 1% at everything, every piece that you're recording, you get a slightly better take, you get slightly better tone, you get your mixes where it's 1% better tone with the EQ, 1% dynamic control with the compression. You have a better mix that adds up, and it is like it compounds. These things compound. So it's not a linear improvement, but it's like a massive improvement where it doesn't seem like a lot, and then all of a sudden it's a huge amount. So 1% better at a time, focus on incremental improvements because they compound, and don't be overwhelmed. If you think that like, oh, I have to get all the acoustic treatment, I have to get this perfect mic position, that's going to feel really overwhelming. But if you can think, okay, last time I didn't do any acoustic treatment, what happens if I just stick a pillow right here while I record? Is that going to help me get a slightly better recording here? You can compare it back to your old recording, or you compare it with no pillow, and you just go, wow, that is better. Or, if I just turn my body 1 more inch this way, so now the mic is a little bit closer to the neck of the guitar on this acoustic guitar, let's say, is it a slightly better recording? Listen back to both recordings. Just pick which one you like more. And if you just do that at every stage, it's way easier than feeling like I have to change everything right now. You don't have to change everything right now. You need to make it easy. You need to make it fun. You need to not worry about it being this huge thing. And you just got to take it a day at a time, a step at a time. You can't make massive changes, period. So don't worry about it. If you want to see the biggest example of this that's very visual, don't do this, but go back and watch my first video on this YouTube channel. You can barely see me. You can barely see me. I think that video is like 100,000 views too. And you can barely see me in that video. And look at this video now. And this isn't perfect. I know this is going to get better. In the next couple of weeks, this video is going to look better because I just make little improvements where I'm like, if I just turn this brightness up a little bit over here and turn the ISO down on the camera, does it look a little bit better? It's little stuff that just adds up, and that's all that it can be. So don't worry a whole ton about it. I have nicer gear now than I did back then, but I only am able to get this better shot because I understand this gear better because I was willing to let myself improve over time. I hope that makes sense. I hope that feels encouraging and empowering to you. And then if you'll indulge me, I'd love to share a bonus one. If you won't, bye. But if you will indulge me, then a little bonus one. I consider this to be the secret of all this stuff. And that's that what you're trying to do with music production is capture the most authentic version of something. So the easier, more effortless that feels, the easier it's going to be able to capture that. And then you're just trying to serve that. You're not trying to make it into something else. You're not trying to change it. You're just trying to serve that authentic recording you got as authentically as you can. So again, just what would maybe make this a little bit better? Not what's going to change this 100%, but what is going to make it a little bit more pleasing to listen to? What's going to make it a little bit more pleasing to listen to? And this is where referencing, I think people can kind of lose the point a little bit with referencing. Referencing is not about trying to make your song sound as much like that as you possibly can. It's about, am I in the right parameters, and can I inch my thing that I love the sound of raw just a little bit more towards that thing? And if you can capture that, then you'll be honoring what you recorded and you'll get a better end result. And sometimes that means doing little to nothing. Sometimes that means doing a lot. Both things are totally fine. As little as you can, as much as you need to. Both things are totally fine. If you remember that, that's going to be really helpful to you. Okay. That's kind of a little bonus one. I didn't really feel like it fit in with everything else, but I felt like it was just important, so I want to share it. Hopefully you stuck around for it. Let's really quickly recap these. I'll try to get my numbering right. Number 1, the most important thing is to have fun. Always be asking yourself, could this be easy? Is there an easier way I could do this that would make it more fun? 2, design your studio to disappear. You just want it to make making professional sounding music effortless. You don't want to think about it at all. 3, how you use what you have matters way more than what you have. 4, the gear does matter, though. You're not going to get that telly sound with a Les Paul, but you could maybe still get a cool sound with that Les Paul, so don't just knock it off. Just think about it. But the gear does kind of matter, and you should always be trying to get the gear that aligns with your vision, where you are in the process, that'll help you get better results, help you execute the music that you're trying to make. So the gear does matter. 5, reference at every stage, recording, producing, mixing, mastering, all of it. Reference at every stage, and it evolves a little bit over time, depending on what you're working on. And 6, Yes, 6. Learn to mix to improve your recordings. 7, everyone should mix on headphones. 8, create the best sounding room you can. You will hear in this room, you hear a fair amount of room in here. That's going to get better over time as I add acoustic treatment to this room. But right now, I'm not letting it prevent me, but I'm going to make this room sound the best that it possibly can. 9, don't let great be the enemy of good. Point being, this room doesn't sound that great right now, but it's good enough for me to do this podcast for you. And if I didn't, you wouldn't get this podcast right now. So I'd be withholding it from you just because I was insecure about how good the room sounded. What a silly thing. And number 10, 1% better at a time. You don't have to do it all right now. Just improve a little bit here and there, and the results over time are going to be insane. It's going to be insane to you. But if you try to do it all right now, you're just going to burn out. And the little bonus one, in my opinion, the secret is just to capture a great performance, a very authentic performance, and then serve it with the mix. And if you do that, you're golden. Okay, I'd love to hear from you. Which one of those resonated with you? Which was most helpful to you? If you're watching this on YouTube, just leave it in the comments below. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, again, leave a review and let me know that you're enjoying the show, that you want to hear more of it. Share it with a friend if it's helpful. If you listen on one of the other podcast services, assuming they allow you to leave reviews, please leave a review there as well. I'm an Apple guy, so I just know the Apple Podcast version, but leave a review. Let me know if this is helpful. Let me know if you want to hear more. And finally, if you're struggling to get a mix that you're happy with, while mixing is only a piece of this puzzle, I can help you with that. I have a completely free 6-step checklist to a pro mix that you can download from the link in the description below, so be sure to pick that up. If you need any gear, be sure to use Sweetwater. Use my link below. It won't cost you any extra. A little bit will come back and support me. If you like this, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a review, all that good stuff. And I'll see you real soon in another episode.
One thing at a time.